I'm going to discuss publishing possibilities and pitfalls and share my experience as essentially a first-time publisher because there is so much to know, so much to learn, and um, I really can only scratch the surface. There is a lot of content out on the internet that is very helpful, but it can also be overwhelming. And most of the content, is, at least that I found, is by people who have a particular perspective because they're trying to sell a product or service. So I'm just going to share my experience without those particular interests, just my experience. So to start out with, let me introduce the subject matters. I'm going to talk about uh, the main kinds of publishing: traditional, self-publishing, and hybrid. And then I'm going to talk about, most of you are not going to meet the mold for traditional publishing, very few, if any. So I'm going to focus on the cost of self-publishing and hybrid publishing. And then I'm going to share with you being wary of hybrid publishers masquerading as booksellers. And also, then next, being wary of promises of turning your book into a bestseller and sharing with you the economic realities for first-time publishers. Then I will explain how you need to verify the royalty structure so you're absolutely clear at the outset of the compensation that you can expect, that you should be able to expect. And we'll go through some of the process: editing, designing a cover and formatting the book, obtaining what is called the International Standard Book Number, which it's abbreviated ISBN, and that is for the purpose of allowing booksellers to easily track, monitor, and distribute their books and do the accounting for royalties. And then also, in a similar vein, obtaining a copyright so that you can protect your book and make sure you are protected against plagiarism. Then we're going to talk about marketing, which is something probably many, if not most, first-time publishers don't think about, and just rather assume that all the work is in writing the book and then it'll sell itself. And that really is not true. It takes a lot of work to market and sell a book, and it can be a lot more time-consuming than actually writing the book. So now we're going to go to the three kinds of publishing: traditional publishing, self-publishing, and hybrid. So traditional publishing is what we think of typically with books. We go buy a book from a best-selling author, and that book is published by one of, now there are only 5 major traditional publishing houses. And the traditional publisher will buy a book, they'll pay for the rights to the book, the author's rights. They will produce the book, distribute it, market it, and they'll pay advance royalties to the author. And that's really for very accomplished authors who have a long track record of big sales. And once in a while, maybe a new author that somehow draws their attention, but that is an extremely rare situation. Traditional booksellers, publishers will sell the books through brick and mortar bookstores such as Barnes and Noble, as well as online. Some, of course, are online only, such as Amazon. And as I mentioned, there used to be many traditional publishing houses. Now there are really only 5. Then the next thing is self-publishing, and this is where you as an author, you do everything yourself. You retain the rights to your book, but you produce and distribute the book yourself. And you sell it through whatever online platforms you desire. And that would include, for example, KDP, which is Kindle Direct Publishing. That's Amazon's publishing platform. And there's Apple Books, and Barnes & Noble has a self-publisher. Typically, whoops, I went too far. Typically, the books are not printed. They're not available in the brick and mortar stores. They are what's called POD, print on demand. So when the platform, KDP, receives an order, they print the book and ship it. And then in addition, KDP has Kindle, which is ebooks. The author has to market the book and do anything to promote it. There are promotional pitches on the online platforms describing the book, but the author will do that. So you have to think of all these things that you want to do. These services, publishing services, are also available through the what are called hybrid self-publishing platforms through Amazon's KDP Publishing, Kindle Direct Publishing, Apple Books, and Barnes & Noble Press, as well as many other hybrid publishers. So let's turn then to the actual hybrid publishers. And what they do is they will provide editing, cover design, and formatting. They'll upload the book in its final format to each selected online platform, such as Amazon's KDP, such as Barnes & Noble, and others as you may select. Now, some of these hybrid publishers, and there are a bunch of boutique ones, and there's lots of hybrid publishers, and they will upload to these platforms for you. And they vary from tremendously in price and tremendously in the quality of the service they provide. There are some they will take whatever author comes to them. They'll do the work. Others are very selective and will take maybe 50 or 100 books a year that they will do. And they go through a vetting process before they accept your book. They'll first want, in many instances, a description of your book to see if it's a subject matter that they are interested in. And if they are, they'll request sample chapters and maybe some other information. And it's a process for them to sign you up. The industry tends to lean heavily towards inclusivity, diversity, and LGBTQ+. And so if your writing is on those kinds of subjects and appealing, it will increase your chances. In the case of my book, I don't fit those. As a matter of fact, my subject really is not on the far left anyway, certainly is not an accepted kind of book. And so I didn't get a response from a lot of people, but I did get a favorable response from what I understand is one of the most reputable. And we went back and forth, and I decided not to go that route for reasons we'll get into in a little bit. So now let's talk about the cost of self-publishing and hybrid publishing. If you truly do everything yourself, you can theoretically publish and do some promotion for as little as a few $100s, or maybe even less, I suppose. But you have to do your own editing, your own cover design. You have to figure out how to do these things with whatever software is out there. As you can tell from my appearance, I'm not what you would call a young tech-savvy person. So for me, some of these things are more difficult than it might be for you. So editing, cover design, formatting of the book to get it in the proper format to upload to the various platforms. Obtaining the ISBN, the International Standard Book Number, that's not difficult. Uploading to selected bookseller platforms such as Kindle Direct. And then there's the marketing, and there's all kinds of things there. Website design and development. It really is advisable if you're going to write a book and publish it and promote it. It really is advisable to have a website, have it well designed. You can do a lot of this on your own. You should definitely have a social media presence and engage in email campaigns for your book. And there are also book reviews and writing contests. And if you're comfortable with people, if you can get some speaking engagements, that's good too. Hybrid publishers, if you want to go that route, range from several $100s, and that's for absolute bare bones services, to tens of thousands of dollars, to even more than $100,000. As a matter of fact, last year I read an article about a woman who got fleeced to the tune of $500,000 for her book, and it went nowhere. The bare bones hybrid publishers, their base packages for basic copy editing, cover design, book formatting, obtaining the ISBN, and uploading to the selected platforms may be as little as a couple $1,000s. With this caveat, when the book is near completion, you can expect the bare bones hybrid publishers to try to sell marketing and publicity services for at least several $1,000s, if not over $10,000 and well above. And then there are the boutique and personalized hybrid publishers, and they are much more expensive and will provide all levels of editing, quality editing, quality design, quality production, marketing, and publicity. But they are very expensive. So the one I mentioned that was interested in my book, as I recall, they take, I think they accept, it's either 50 or 100 books per year from new authors to publish. And they offered me two different packages. One was $42,875, and the other was $65,755. I don't remember the differences between the two. Both were very comprehensive. One was more so than the other. I thought the company was very impressive, but I just was not comfortable with spending that much money on my book, and I'll get into that a bit more. Before I do, I want to warn you about hybrid publishers masquerading as booksellers. So there are a number of companies out there with Barnes & Noble in their names and substantially identical logos as Barnes & Noble, and yet are not owned by Barnes & Noble or in any way affiliated with Barnes & Noble. And I learned this lesson the hard way. So if you look here on the screen, at the top here is a Barnes & Noble logo. That's the bookstore. That's the real Barnes & Noble. And I ended up signing up with a hybrid publisher called Barnes & Noble Publishing. And I thought and believed and was misled that Barnes & Noble Publishing is an affiliate of Barnes & Noble, the bookstore. I'll get into issues that arose later with royalties and all. And it was when I finally decided to go direct to Barnes & Noble to try to resolve the issue that I was informed by Barnes & Noble that Barnes & Noble Publishing is not affiliated with Barnes & Noble, the bookstore, that they have nothing to do with them. And Barnes & Noble referred me to a web page of theirs warning of scams And here's the alert. And this is copied and pasted from the Barnes and Noble webpage. And they're warning authors to be careful of offers by companies that have that name, and warning that it may not be them, and to watch out for companies with Barnes and Noble in the name who ask for money in advance, because they say they never do that. So that is something you have to beware of. And since I discovered this and started trying to resolve the issues, I found that the Barnes and Noble publishing that I contracted with is no longer in the internet. Their website has suddenly disappeared. And in the process of doing that, I found many other companies, I shouldn't say many other, but several other companies with Barnes and Noble in their name. So be wary, and you should understand this also. Even though Barnes and Noble gives the warning, Barnes and Noble bookstore gives the warning to beware of these other companies, and they're unaffiliated, Barnes and Noble nonetheless profits from them. And people get misled because, in my case, Barnes and Noble publisher appeared on the back of my book. And Barnes and Noble, the bookstore, was selling my book. So once I got to the bottom of this and realized what was happening, I directed that Barnes and Noble bookstore remove the book from their platform, because I did not want to be part of any scheme that is misleading the public into believing that Barnes and Noble, the bookstore, is publishing my book. So I had them remove it. And then my book is also on Amazon. And what we have done is gone in and edited the back cover to remove Barnes and Noble publishing from the back cover, so that there's no longer any representation. And now the book is being sold without the identity of the publisher, and solely on Amazon. And we've removed it from not only Barnes and Noble, but from Ingram Sparks, which is a online seller that sells not only via Barnes and Noble bookstore, but other platforms as well. Next, I want to talk about bestseller promises. You will see all kinds of things out there promising to turn your book into a bestseller. And that is just not economic reality. First-time authors, it's extraordinarily rare. Your chances of being struck by lightning are greater than having a bestseller as a first-time author. I mentioned earlier the one hybrid publisher that I thought was very good, with the packages for $42,000 plus and $65,000 plus that I decided to forego. And here's why I decided not to do that. I really wanted to get more information, and I wanted it from the perspective of authors. So I asked that company, and the representative I spoke with was very responsive to my questions. He was very direct. He didn't sugarcoat things. He didn't necessarily volunteer everything that would have been useful, but when I asked the right questions, I got the answers. But I wanted to get the perspective of authors, so I asked him if he could put me in touch with two authors who had published with him. And he put me in touch with two. And one of them sold about 1,500 books, and the other sold about 3,000 books, according to their accounts. Now, they were very pleased. They really wanted to be published, and they didn't have any problem with the amount of money that they were spending. They had done this quite a few years earlier, so the the cost was quite a bit less, but it was still very, very substantial. And they were pleased with it. But clearly, on the numbers I'm giving you, they didn't come close to recouping their costs, much less making a profit. And so I went back to the hybrid publisher with the specific question: how much do first-time authors typically recover in costs and profit, if at all? And again, this agent who I spoke with was very, very direct, very responsive to my request. And he said, first-time authors don't profit doing this. And they don't even come close to recouping their costs. So you need to be aware of that. And you need to decide how much you want to spend based on how important it is to you to be published and how much you can reasonably afford. Don't get all doe-eyed and get led around spending tons of money when you can't afford it and dig yourself a hole. Which brings me to the next subject, which is the importance of verifying the royalty structure. The percentages to hybrid publishers and seller platforms, KDP, Amazon, and so forth, and the author have to be determined. So typically, the author will receive for a paperback 60% of the royalty. But the starting point is, what is the 60% calculated on? Is it the retail price after deducting the print costs, or are the print costs deducted solely from the author's share? And that's an important thing. In my case, this Barnes & Noble publishing company that I ended up mistakenly contracting with specified in the service agreement that the royalties would be calculated after deducting print costs from the retail price. So in other words, the publisher and the author share in the cost of the printing. But when it came time to set the retail price, they told me that the royalties are calculated first, and then the print costs are deducted solely from the author's share. That is a huge, huge difference. In my case, it would result in the publisher receiving 1.5 times as much as I do, instead of vice versa. Now, setting aside that difference, pardon me, and accepting that I paid the print costs for my share. Once that turned out to be the case, my royalties from Amazon turned out to be in the percentage stated. And so the retail price of my book in paperback is $18.95. And my royalty from Amazon has been around $4.40 per book. But the royalty from Ingram Spark, which processes the sales through Barnes & Noble, the real Barnes & Noble bookstore, at least for the self-publisher that I use, Barnes & Noble Publishing, my royalty has only been 76 cents, just 76 cents per book. So I went to Ingram Sparks and Barnes & Noble and asked for an accounting and an explanation of where all the money's going. And both refused to say. They say that's private information and I'm not entitled to it. So as I say, that problem has been eliminated because, as I noted, I've removed the book from their platforms. They're not authorized to sell it anymore. And I'm done with them. But you need to carefully check that out. So now let's talk about more of the process of doing the book, and we'll start with editing. There are 3 different kinds. There's developmental editing, line editing, and copy editing. Developmental editing focuses on the overall structure of the book, including standards on how to develop a story. And there are standards at what point the plot should develop into climax and so forth. And if you don't know anything about this, which candidly I don't, there are books that you can find and articles that will help you with this. Line editing hones the writing style. And maybe, for just to pull an example out, maybe there's too much of the passive voice and they think more active voice should be used. And so it's style, use of adjectives, use of adverbs, descriptions, so forth. Then you get down at the end to copy editing, which addresses grammar, punctuation, and spelling to completely refine the product. The experience and qualifications can vary tremendously among the self-publishers, and you need to understand that, and you need to ask. And I would suggest also inquiring about, frankly, the age and background of the editor that's assigned to you, because particularly depending on your subject matter, it may require a certain level of experience or maturity for an editor to really understand what you're writing, so that you're on the same page, pun intended, and you minimize conflicts with your own editor. The editor that I was assigned at this Barnes & Noble publishing company did things that to me were incomprehensible. She actually changed, I have some quotes in my book from Dr. Martin Luther King. They're his quotes. And she wanted to change the punctuation in his quotes. Well, you just don't do that. First of all, when you're quoting, you're quoting. And when you're giving attribution, as I do in the book, you can't change anything in the quote. But second of all, I'm certainly not going to change, even if it was wrong, I'm not going to change something that Dr. Martin Luther King wrote. I have tremendous respect and reverence for him. She also, in some instances, made edits that incorrectly changed the meaning of a sentence. I haven't gone back to find specific examples, but let me give an illustration of the importance of punctuation and what I'm talking about. Let's eat, comma, mother. What that means is you're asking mother, let's eat, comma, mother. If you remove the comma, it becomes let's eat mother, as in you're talking to your brothers and sisters and saying, let's eat our mother. So the meaning with punctuation can be critical, and you need to understand that, and you need to understand the experience and expertise of an editor. So there are alternatives, because editing is crucial. And let me tell you, and I practiced law for 35 years, so it's not just this book, but I can tell you my own legal writing and reviewing it and doing corrections and revising it. It is a really hard task, because as the person who wrote the text, you know what's supposed to be there. You have in your mind what it is, and when you go back and proofread, you tend to miss mistakes because you're just reading over it. And so it really is helpful to have somebody independent. And there may be stylistic things that you've missed, or there may be things that are so obvious to you that you don't recognize that it's not clear to the reader. So there are alternatives. As I mentioned, there are books and articles on proven structure, and there are things on style and editing. And then you can use artificial intelligence, and there's actually a self-publisher that is just doing just that. Instead of offering editing services by people, they have in their book publishing system AI to do the proofreading and editing for you. I have no idea the quality. I don't know anything about it. I've not been exposed to it directly. I just know it's out there. Another possibility is a trusted friend or relative. Now, before we had this editor at Barnes and Noble Publishing, I had my sister serve as my editor. She's very, very bright. She worked in corporate America as a compliance officer, and in that capacity, she did quite a bit of technical writing, and she writes extraordinarily well. And that turned out to be just absolutely great. And we were on the same page, and we, had a number of differences of opinion on how we did things. But more often than not, I followed my sister's advice, and it was great. So now let's go to designing the cover and formatting the book. There are articles that you can find on the internet and probably YouTube videos about proven book cover colors and designs based on genre. And this stuff is very, very helpful. And you should understand it, because there are certain kinds of designs and colors that one expects of certain genres, but not others. And you need to be consistent, because if the appearance isn't right, people aren't going to buy your book. A bare bones, even if you use a hybrid publisher, particularly a bare bones hybrid publisher, won't know very much about your book, and certainly not like you do. So even if you use a hybrid publisher to design your book cover, conceptualize it first. In my case, I did a mock-up. I took different images and copied and pasted them into a mock-up that I sent to the editor. And the editor then incorporated those into the cover design. And that's the one good thing I can say about Barnes and Noble Publishing, is the cover design person did a very, very good job. I got back an initial design that I liked in general, but there were some things missing, and I explained it. And the very next cover design was just, I thought, terrific. And my sister, who worked with me on my book, she thought it was terrific too. Then for formatting, each of the platforms will have standard sizing, formats, and fonts with instructions on how to use them and how to use their upload platform. And it takes a little bit of effort. For those of you who are younger and more tech savvy, it's probably going to be way easier for you than for me. But you can do all this stuff yourself. If you don't want to, there are companies out there called aggregators who do this, and they will upload it through many platforms. But you also have to decide whether you want to be on all these different platforms, because it may not be necessary. For example, part of the package I signed up for was for international distribution. But in retrospect, that really was a waste and unnecessary, because my book is about First Amendment rights in the United States, and it's not likely to catch much of an audience outside of this country. So next, obtaining the International Standard Book Number and copyright. The ISBN, International Standard Book Number, is, as I mentioned, a unique number to allow the booksellers to keep track of the book, sales, distribution, accounting, and payment of royalties. And now the number is a 13-digit number. You have to obtain separate ISBNs for hardcover and paperback, but not for ebook. Hybrid publishers will obtain the ISBN for you for each book. If you decide to go totally alone and not use a hybrid publisher, you can do this yourself. the agency in the United States for ISBNs is a company called Bowker, however they say it. And here's the email address, www.boker.com/ISBN-US. And the cost is $125 per ISBN, but there's a discount for buying multiple numbers. Then you should also, as I mentioned at the beginning, copyright your book with the U.S. Copyright Office to assure your owner, protect your ownership rights, and protect against plagiarism. Again, the hybrid publishers can do this for you. Part of my service agreement with Barnes & Noble Publishing was that they would do that. They never did, despite numerous follow-up emails from me. So I'm going to be doing that myself, but that I do not believe is terribly difficult. You just go to the Copyright Office online at www.copyright.gov/registration/. Marketing. As I mentioned, your book is not going to sell itself. Self-publishers will offer marketing service, and once the book is published, you will be inundated with emails and ads from book marketing agents and publicists to market your book. There are things that they can do, such as press releases, getting you into writing contests. They can do website creation, including search engine optimization called SEO, which is for the purpose of getting hits for your book, for your website when people enter certain terms. And there's a whole science to that. I don't pretend to know much about it. They offer things like billboard advertising on the electronic billboards in New York City. And they will offer all kinds of services in very flowery but empty business jargon. So in the case of Barnes & Noble Publishing, they promised an approach for marketing with a, quote, targeted organic audience. I have no idea what that is. And I quipped back, is there such a thing as an inorganic audience? Because organic means alive. And so I said, presumably you're not planning on nobody's going to market my book to dead people, so I don't understand really what this means. And then they talked about, quote, enhanced author branding with A+ content. And we went back and forth with several emails, and I just couldn't get concrete answers to what it was that they were promising in many of these things. And then the billboard advertising, which they offered on a billboard in Times Square, that was going to be, I can't remember how much, that was over $1,000 or $2,000, whatever it was. And that's once an hour. Your book shows up on the billboard in Times Square for 15 seconds. Once an hour for 24 hours straight. And then that's it. Is that going to really accomplish anything? So when you consider the value of marketing services, really consider what each is likely to achieve, if it's likely to result in sales, or is it just something to appeal to your ego, which is what I concluded was the case with billboard advertising. And don't succumb to that. A good question to ask is, and I did this, ask specifically what the services are and how they translate into sales. And ask for the resulting sales volume of other offers. In the case of Barnes & Noble Publishing, they maintained that that was confidential because it invaded the privacy of their individual authors. I wasn't asking about specific authors. I asked overall. what is the success rate? How many sales are going to be generated by my spending? One of their pitches, I think, was $12,000, one of their services. I don't recall exactly, but it's at least several $1,000s. And so I said, how is this going to translate into sales? And they couldn't tell me. So the good thing about my experience with Barnes and Noble Publishing, aside from them doing a good job on the cover design, is that I decided against hiring them for their marketing services. Even if you hire someone for marketing and publicity, you have to understand that you're going to spend a lot of time on the book, on marketing. It's not going to sell itself. In fact, I think you have to anticipate that you're going to spend more time on marketing the book than you did on actually writing it. You can do this by, among other things, email campaigns. And you should start thinking about your marketing and beginning your marketing while the book is still in the production stage, so that when it's ready to go, you already have people out there. In my case, we had a very, very specific audience that we wanted to reach, admittedly a very small audience, relatively speaking. And we targeted these organizations. So my book is about the Middle East conflict and the history of Israel and the Jewish people in the Middle East. That's a small audience, and it's about the First Amendment rights in America for Palestinian protesters, but the competing rights of Jewish students to be protected from violence and intimidation on campus. So we did an email campaign to synagogues and Jewish community centers all across the United States, pro-Israel and pro-Jewish advocacy groups, including Christian pro-Israel groups. And you should really think about very specifically who you're trying to reach and how you might do so. Your website you can design yourself. There are online systems out there available for this, including one that is very popular called WordPress, which is what was used for my website, but we actually hired a website designer to do it. And to me and my sister, who's more savvy than I am, it was anything but user-friendly. So consider that. You can check it out yourself. And the cost of website designers and SEO specialists, search engine optimization specialists, they range tremendously, big range of numbers. So you can consider those different avenues. The actual cost of having your website is very small, less than $100 for domain registration and hosting, which you can do through groups like GoDaddy and A2 Hosting. A good website designer should be able to do search engine optimization so that you get hits on your website. We have had, frankly, a bunch of problems because for whatever reason, something having to do with indexing, and don't ask me what that means, this is technical stuff beyond my pay grade. When you set it up, you can contact Google and have Google do indexing, and it's so that your website gets recognized. And for whatever reason, this has not been done correctly, even after several months for my website. And so a lot of times when you enter the exact title of my book in your browser, my website doesn't come up at all. Fortunately, it comes up on the Amazon site on the webpage for the sale of my book, but it is not coming up with my website, which isn't good, and we're still trying to work through that. We also set up social media sites, and we post on there, and I try to follow certain people and let them know about the book. In all candor, it has been very, very time consuming. It has not produced much fruit, but we are remaining hopeful. One of the things that I do also, which you might want to consider, is videos, your own videos that you can post on your website and on social media. And so I've posted to date about 40. And there is free software that you can download onto your computer, such as CapCut. CapCut is supposedly the most user-friendly. Uh, Again, I'm not tech savvy, and I found it a little bit difficult to use, but the our website and SEO consultant is helping a little bit with editing and posting those. But you can do it all on your own. There's all these, of course, social media people who do this stuff every day, and it's second nature to them. And then blogs, and I have a blog. I haven't posted much because I'm doing mostly the videos. And then another idea to consider, and actually, we did do this, AI. You can ask AI for recommendations on how to sell, distribute, and market your book. And my sister did this for my book, and we got back really good recommendations, 90% of which I was pleased to see that my sister and I had decided, and we incorporated some of the other 10%. So there's an idea for you. So let me close with discussing briefly how to maximize your chance of success with your book. First of all, it's not how to be a bestseller, but how to set and meet realistic expectations. As I mentioned, the two authors who published with the expensive boutique hybrid publisher that I mentioned, they were both very pleased with the results. Both are attorneys, both are smart, and both understood the economic reality. They both really wanted to be published. So the outcome for them was very good. They were very satisfied with it. I did not want to spend upwards of $40,000 or even close to that. So I thought, I'd rather have less sales, but not spend that much. And I decided I want to stay under $20,000. And I've done that. I'm well under $20,000. And, I will continue doing this through the year, working on these things. And when it's all said and done, I don't think I'll come anywhere near the $20,000. And at the end of the year, I will probably just let it rest, because I've somewhat enjoyed the process, but I also know that I don't want to continue doing it. The time commitment is huge, especially the more you do yourself. So just understand these things. If you really want your book to be published and you establish a realistic budget for money and time, you won't be disappointed. And you'll be proud of the accomplishment. You will. I'm proud of my book. I enjoyed the process of writing it. And I believe in the story, and I had a purpose. I wanted to educate on the Middle East and Israel. I wanted to educate on the First Amendment and the limits of the First Amendment. And I did that, and for me, that was all worthwhile. So in closing, let me just say I wish you the best luck with your publishing journey, and good luck to you. And if you would like a copy of the outline that I showed during this video, you can certainly email me through our website, which is campuscrossfire.com. Good luck.